Hello, this is Ms. DB, and in this lesson we're going to go over Chapter 7, Section 1 on ratio and proportion. Now this should be a review from algebra for you. Our objectives are to write and simplify ratios and to use proportions to solve problems. Our vocabulary for this lesson is ratio, proportion, extremes, means, and cross products. Extremes and means are probably the two new terms or ones that you might have to review a little bit. Alright, if you remember The Lord of the Rings, those movies transport viewers to the fantasy world of Middle-earth. Many scenes feature vast fortresses, sprawling cities, and bottomless mines. To film these images, the movie makers used ratios to help them build highly detailed miniature models. So you see in this picture these giant kind of guard statues at the beginning of this realm, and they didn't recreate such enormous structures. Instead, they used ratios to make a scale model, a miniature model. A ratio compares two numbers by division. The ratio of two numbers a and b can be written as a to b, a and then the colon b, or a over b, where b is not equal to 0. For example, the ratios 1 to 2 can be written as 1 to 2 with the colon, or 1 over 2 and with the 2. We usually will write it like the fraction way, because then we're able to do more operations with it. Remember that you cannot have 0 in the denominator, because that's undefined in math, not allowed. Alright, one of the ways that we use ratio is to write slope of a line. So here we have a line L, and they give us 2 points that are on the line, and if you remember, slope is rise over run. That's a ratio. And there's a slope formula that says to find the rise, you take the difference of the y values. And to find the run, you take the difference of the x values. So we're going to plug in for y2, we're going to use -2 here. And for y1, we'll use 3. So -2 minus 3. And then for the x values, we'll have 2 minus a -1. And remember, 2 minus a -1 is the same as plus. So on the top, we get -5. And on the bottom, we have 2 minus a -1, which is the same as 2 plus 1, which is 3. And -5 over 3, you can leave it like that. Or you can put the negative out front. It doesn't matter to me one way or the other. It doesn't matter where the negative is as long as there's one negative in this problem. So -5/3 is the ratio that is the slope for that line. Alright, see if you can do one here. You got 2 points, and you're going to write a ratio expressing the slope of m. So remember, I thought this would do this step by step so you could check your work, but when I clicked the button, it all appeared. So let's see again. We have rise over run. And for slope, you take the difference of the y values for the rise and the difference in the x values for the run. And you plug these in. So we have 5 minus 3 for the rise. And then 6 minus a -2, which is the same as 6 plus 2 for the run. And then you simplify your fraction. So our ratio in simplest form is 1 over 4, or 1/4. Alright, we're going to be using ratios with geometric figures, so a lot of times that'll involve a figure like a rectangle. So in this rectangle, the ratio of the side lengths may be written as 3 to 7 to 3 to 7. Now if you have more than 2 numbers, you can't write it like a fraction. Okay? If you have 3 sides, you can have 3 numbers. You'd have to use the colon method of writing this then. You will not write these as fractions. So here we have a triangle, and its side lengths are in a ratio of 4 to 7 to 5. And its perimeter is 96 centimeters. Perimeter, remember, is if you add all the lengths of the sides up. What is the length of the shortest side? Alright, so what we're going to do, basically, I'm going to first sketch a triangle here. Any kind of triangle is fine. We know the side lengths are in the ratio of 4 to 7 to 5. But that doesn't mean that their lengths are 4, 5, and 7. It means that they would simplify to that ratio. So we have to add an x to each of those parts. So we're going to let the side lengths be 4x, 5x, and 7x, x being any number that you multiply this by. So if x was 1, then the side lengths of the triangle would be 4, 5, and 7. But the perimeter then would be 4 plus 5 is 9, plus 7 is 16, would not be 96. So it must be some other number that's x. Maybe it's 2, maybe it's 3. So to find out, we're going to set this up. So if the side lengths are 4x, 7x, and 5x, we can add those three together to equal our perimeter. So here's what they did there. You write an equation. So you combine 4x plus 7x plus 5x is 16x. So 16x equals 96. And then you divide both sides by 16. And x is equal to 6. Now we know what x is. Once you know what x is, then you can answer the question, what is the length of the shortest side? So the shortest side is this one, so we would say 4 times 6 is 24. Now they might ask you for the lengths of each side, so then you would just plug 6 in for each of them, depending on what they ask you. So that's how you'll do problems with ratios of a figure. You'll just put an x after the ratio they give you, and then you'll add them together to find the perimeter if that's what they ask you to do. Okay, so in this one, they don't give you a perimeter. This is an angle measure. In an angle measure, they don't have to give you a perimeter and give us a triangle. Because we know something. But again, we'll put the x's. These are angles. 6x and 13x. We know that in a triangle, there is how many degrees in every triangle? 180. Now, I'm going to skip that first line. I know that there's 180 degrees in every triangle. I'm not going to write it like that because I already put my angles in. I have 1x plus 6x plus 13x equals 180. So you're going to add your like terms, which is 20x, and then you divide both sides by 20 to get that x is equal to 9. Then they say, what is the measure of each angle? So you'll put 9 in for each of x. You don't have to do the whole y thing. So 6x is 6 times 9. So one of the angles is 54. This one, of course, is just 9. Oh, why does Cortana keep thinking I want to talk to her? This one's 9, and this is whatever 13 times 9 is. 117. Okay, there she goes again. She heard me say that. Look at Cortana thought this is what she wanted me to watch. Thank you, Cortana. Where's my slideshow? Okay, so we have 117 in there. Okay, I will be careful not to click on any. Alright, proportion, you will probably remember, is an equation stating that two ratios are equal. So if we had A over B equals C over D, the values of A and D, the top left and the bottom right, are the extremes. Top left, bottom right. The values B and C are the means. So here, this one and this one. So the top right, I'll write it by the means, top right and the bottom left. So those are called the means. When the proportion is written as A to B equals C to D, the extremes are in the first and last positions, and the means are in the middle. So here's our means when you write it this way. There's our means. Go back to red here. And our extremes are extremely far away from each other. Now, the cross product property says that the product of the means equals the product of the extremes. So the two numbers across from each other are equal if you multiply them. So remember, extremes is these two. It's the product of the extremes, AD, is equal to the product of the means, come on, pen, which is BC in this picture. Okay, that's the cross product's properties. All right, so to solve this proportion, we're going to take that the product of the extremes equals the product of the means. So 7 times 72 is equal to x times 56. And then you solve that. So 504 equals 56x, and divide by 56, and you get that x is 9. Now that's a very basic problem, probably won't give you any trouble. They sometimes get a little more complicated, like this one. Now in this one, same rule applies, the product of the extremes equals the product of the means, but this time we have z minus 4 times z minus 4, which is z minus 4 squared. Now, oh, there she goes again. It's something to do when I touch the writing pad. So z minus 4 times z minus 4 is z minus 4 squared. You have to FOIL this. So that's z squared. Outer would be negative 4z. The inner would also be minus 4z. And then negative 4 times negative 4 is plus 16. So that becomes z squared minus 8z plus 16. Because negative 4z minus 4z is negative 8z. And 5 times 20 is 100. Now, instead of doing what I did, they said, why do that if I could right here take the square root of both sides and get z minus 4 equals 100 equals the square root of 100, which is 10. So see, all the work I did, you can do it this way. And then you could say that this is equal to 100. And you could maybe use the quadratic formula if you remember that. But they're saying that it actually ends up being easier to take the square root before you square both sides. And then you'd have z minus, I better write it over here, they're going to write it on top of mine, z minus 4 equals 10, or z minus 4 equals negative 10. So you'd have two small equations to solve. And then when you solve them by adding 4 to both sides, you get two different answers, 14 or negative 6. Now, if you were doing it the way I was doing it, I could set this equal to 0. So I'd have z squared minus 8z, what's 16 minus 100? 100 minus 16 is 84. So that'd be minus 84 equals 0. And then I could look for the factors, z and z, and I'm guessing that they're going to be minus 14 and plus 6. 14 times 6 is also equal to 84. So you could factor it and get the same answers. That's another way to solve this problem. Okay, here's a more basic one. Check your work and then hit, so pause the video and then hit play after you get your answer and see if you got it right. So you should have wrote 3 times 56 equals 8x, and then simplified to 168 equals 8x, and then finally x equals 21. Okay, this one's a little more complicated, but not as complicated as the example we did. So again, hit pause and solve it, and then play and see if you got the right thing. So you should have had 2y times 4y equals 9 times 8, which simplifies to 8y squared equals 72. Divide by 8 to get y squared equals 9. Take the square root of both sides, gives you two answers. Check and see that you got your two answers of plus 3 and minus 3. Negative 3 and positive 3. You don't need to do the equations part. I don't know why you have to do one more. I thought that was done, but this one's a basic one. D is equal to 9. Okay, here's a more complex one. So x plus 3 squared equals 4 times 9. And then take the square root of both sides to get x plus 3 equals plus or minus 6. And then you have two different equations to solve. Your answers would be 3 or negative 9. Okay, there's lots of ways to do the cross products property. So if you have a proportion A over B equals C over D, that's the same as AD equals BC because A times D equals B times C. It's also the same as b over a equals d over c if we had just reversed or flip-flopped both of these, the reciprocals. And this one you might not expect. It's also the same as a over c equals b over d. So with numbers, you'll see that it makes more sense. So if you have a proportion 1/3 equals 2/6, true proportion, 1/3 is equal to 2/6. We could write that as 1 times 6 equals 3 times 2, cross products property. It's also true that 3 over 1 equals 6 over 2. 3 is equal to, yeah, that makes sense. And also, here's the 1/2. So if you go this way, 1/2 is equal to 3 over 6. So you may have learned that before, you may have not have. It's not one that we talk about a lot or use a lot. Okay, so in this problem it says, given that 18c equals 24d, find the ratio of d to c in simplest form. So here's how you're going to do that. You're going to write that out and divide both sides by 24c. You might be thinking, what? So we're dividing both sides by, remember we want it to be d over c. So if I divide both sides by the number next to the d, that'll get rid of the 24. And to get rid of the c, I'll divide by c. Now you could do this in 2 steps. You could say 18c equals 24d. And let's say, well, first I'll try to get d by itself. And you could do that. And then you'd have 18c over 24 equals d. And then you're like, well, but I want to get rid of the c too. So now I got to divide both sides by c. So they're saying, let's just do that, both of them at the same time. So you get 18 over 24 equals d over c. That's not simplified yet. That simplifies to 3 over 4 because you can divide both of them by 6. Okay, let's try another one. Okay, so we want to find the ratio of t to s in simplest form. So not right now, we have 16s equals 20t. So we write that down. Now we want t on top. So I have to divide by the s and also by the 20, which is next to the t. So I'm going to divide both sides by 20 and by s. So what I get is 16 over 20, the s's cancel, equals 20's cancel, and I get t over s. Then you have to simplify that. Remember, to simplify a fraction, you divide top and bottom by the same number. So if I divided them both by 4, I would get 4/5 equals t over s. All right, here's a problem where we would be using ratios. So in this case, another Lord of the Rings thing. The special effects team of Lord of the Rings built a model of Sauron's tower with a height of 8 meters and a width of 6. So they have a height of 8 from this tower and a width of 6. If the width of the full-size tower in the movie is 996 meters, what is its height? So we're going to set up a proportion here. The height of the model tower over the width of the model tower would be equal to the height of the full-size tower over the width of the full-size tower. So then we plug in our numbers. 8 over 6 equals x, that's the unknown. We don't know the height of the actual tower, over 996. So we just have to solve this proportion. So we use cross products properties to write it like, well, they have it, I would have wrote 8 times 996 equals 6x, but of course it doesn't matter. You're going to end up doing the same thing either way, and you'll get that x equals 1,328, which is the height then of the full-size tower. Okay, so what if it's the same thing, but they have a different model, and they have a height of 9.2 and a width of 6, and with still 996 for the width of the actual. So then it'll have a different height. Like they decided to, maybe, we want a different model here. And then you'll just solve this for x. Divide by 6, and you get 1,527.2 equals x. Okay, that's it. I hope you learned a lot and that you're able to apply these problems to the worksheet. If you have any questions, please let me know, and I'll be happy to help. Thanks a lot and have a great day.